everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It is July 11th, 2021. I am JMike. Alongside me, you might know him from the Atheist Experience or the Atheist Debates Project and various other shows. I have Matt Dillahunty with me. Extremely excited. Matt, how's it going?
It's going really good. I had a bit of a technical problem, but my roommate helped me sort it. I'm fat, dumb, and happy. I've had a great weekend. I'm excited to be doing the show with you, and I know that we're going to be getting you on AXP sometime in the near future. So yeah,
that's true until I wake up from it all and it's not real. But yes, we will. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited for that. This Sunday. I wanted to ask you here at the beginning because I always found the Atheist Debates Project that you do to be a really useful tool. And I'm not.
Oh, thanks.
I think most people know it, but I wanted to kind of get your opinion on how that all started. Because if you go back further in your videos, you have conversations with various different people from Bob Price to I think you even did one with someone you debated. Was it Brett Gunta? I can't remember his full name. But how did that all get started for you, and what was the goal in mind?
Yeah, that's Blake Junta,
sorry,
who we did. I don't know how many debates that we did, but I had him sit down in the room, and actually that kind of maybe ended the debates that Blake and I are doing. He's also been really terrible on LGBT issues, and I'd love to kind of dig in with him some on that. But I think in that one video with Blake, we got to the crux of what I consider to be a massive flaw in his epistemology, which is I was asking him, how would you go about testing? Like, imagine we're sitting in this room and we've been here our entire lives, and you are telling me that there's someone outside of this room who's communicating with you telepathically and they can do certain things. How would you go about testing that? And he came up with a test protocol, but he had to acknowledge that it still wouldn't necessarily demonstrate to me the fact that there was, something moving or he got a message or whatever else. And then I hit this thing of, how do you even know there is such a thing as outside this room? For example, you're assuming from all of your other experience that these are walls that have a certain thickness and there's something beyond it. But if we've been in this room for the entirety of our lives, then for all we know, there's nothing outside of it. There's just wall forever. And he gave a really good test for how to verify whether or not there was someone outside sending messages, and it failed to demonstrate, or it failed to apply that same sort of test methodology to his claim about God. It's like, oh well, God's different. But I've always, genuinely liked Blake. We did a lot of it. The Atheist Debates Project started up because I was doing what I called a drive home brain dumps. I would take my cell phone and put it in a holder in the car, and I had like a 45-minute drive back from work for a while.
Yeah.
And so I would use that time I talk to myself. I take notes that way. It's been helpful. It's one of the reasons people say, oh, well, how can you, do the show and do so much and come up with so much off your head? It's because I live this stuff. I spend time having these conversations outside of here and with lots of people, and sometimes just with me. And I decided it would be a good idea to maybe do something with a little more structure. But I lost my job, my tech job, one of many that I had here. And I looked for another tech job for about 6 months, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And Aaron and his wife came down to spend their their anniversary at our place. And while they were here, they had just started setting up their Patreon, and they were like, look, you really need to do this. You should just do it. And at the time, I didn't think there was any possibility I could be a full-time atheist. That doesn't even something that made any sense.
Yeah.
And, my YouTube, by the way, to this day is still not monetized, although that will be changing because I've been told the YouTube's going to monetize it whether I want it to or not. So I'm going to monetize it.
Yeah. So why would you not do it at that point?
If somebody's getting money off of it, it's going to be me.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's going to change. But yeah, Aaron and his wife talked me into doing it and setting it up. And since then, it's been, it was within 2 months, I realized this was going to be primarily my job. And so I do the Atheist Debates Project, as well as doing lectures, debates, and magic shows, traveling around to conventions, although that's taken a hit during the pandemic. But I'm glad it was useful to you, and I hope it's useful to other people.
Yeah, I kind of grew up on the old videos on YouTube when it would be like responses to people. So it'd be like, theoretical bullshit or Z Zucker. I can't remember. It was Atheist 88 or something like that. But I remember all these different guys that would, they just respond back to each other's videos, and it would be like RE for reply to. And so that the vibe of the Atheist Debates Project at first, when I first saw that, I thought it was kind of that similar thing where I was like, okay, well, maybe these are just responses, but then, as opposed to it being a direct response to maybe someone's argument, you kind of cover the gambit of whether it's contingency arguments or things like that. And so that was really helpful for me, going beyond maybe just like Scott's videos or something like that, where we're very in a niche spot for very specific premises or specific arguments. It's like, we can now kind of analyze the category of arguments as opposed to someone just saying, well, this cosmological argument or things like that. And so, yeah, I think that it's very beneficial. And if anyone hasn't, definitely go out to check that out. Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and get into calls?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's have fun. I see the calls exploded. We went from one before the show to now we're full up. So
yeah. So on the show, we're going to prioritize theists, of course. So we are going to go to Mike in Ohio, who would like to talk about being a polytheist. And Mike, you're on with Matt and Mike. Are you there?
Matt, JMike. Hey, I love you guys. Thank you so much for taking my call, Matt.
Absolutely,
it's an honor to talk to you, man. Matt,
well, you'll get over it.
Through Bible. I don't think so. When I was going through Bible college, I started really questioning the scriptures and the Bible. And I actually thought I was being attacked by demons, And the one time you popped up on my queue on YouTube, I don't know how, and I started watching, and you really helped me get through that. And I just want to thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I am still a theist, a polytheist, a pagan, and a heathen. And one thing I want to touch on real quick is I do find community with atheists, because so many of the calls that you all take, because of the dominant Abrahamic Christian worldview, we do have common ground on that. And also in that worldview, not only do I deny, that we need Christ for salvation in the Bible, but I do follow other gods. And it's a weird situation. I called in last week and talked to Katie and Lloyd, and it gave me the nerve to call and talk to you. I'm kind of nervous about being on the phone. I always did my individual research, trying to find what I thought was true on theology and history, and I never ever really did science. And I went to college 30 years ago. I can't remember that stuff. So I'm very uneducated in that, and I'm trying to learn. And so what I wanted to talk about was how I kind of see creation as a pagan and a heathen, and my view on deity. I mean, every pagan and heathen is different, but I see it kind of like pantheistic and with deism. It's there. There's an intelligence of the universe. It's not real active with us.
Well, hey, let's start with that real quick.
Yeah, because those words aren't the same.
You're saying intelligence. I'm wondering how it is you inferred intelligence with the universe. It seems to be. There seems to be some mechanism that you have there the reason why you've gotten to that conclusion.
It would be creation. Things in creation that I think have some intelligent design to them.
What do you mean? What do you mean by creation, Mike? Do you mean because that might sneak in a creator, right? And I'm just going to disagree with that. So I don't really know what you mean by creation. Do you mean the fact that does that incorporate naturalistic ways of life forming, or is that just for a specific deity?
It does. It's with polytheism. There's soft polytheists and hard polytheists, who believe in the gods or then view this divine as a representation through that cultural belief as connecting with those gods. I can't prove any of that. I mean, there's shared personal gnosis and verified personal gnosis, and you can't prove any of that stuff. I will admit to that. But from what little bit I do know about science, and remember, as being a pagan and a heathen, I'm kind of, referring to what might be nature's God that I even had trouble explaining. But I believe in evolution for sure, and I believe in the natural selection, of course. But
well, hey, hold on, let's go back, because when you're looking at it from that standpoint, I'm wondering, you're saying you don't know, but you've also somehow detected that there's intelligence. It almost sounds like you're saying that nature could have this consciousness. But then you're saying you don't know. So I'm wondering how you know that that's the case. Like, how there has to be some steps at which that was the case. It can't just be of some ignorance where you go, well, it must be the case this way, or incredulity to say, like, I can't imagine it some other way. Like, what was the actual method for you to get there?
I might have if this is the right phrase to use, what someone might call existential angst of not wanting to give up on the divine. Katie, when I called last week, she really.
Mike,
yeah.
Mike, let's because so you've talked about polytheism, soft and hard. You're a pagan, you're a heathen, pantheism, deism. You rolled in there, personal gnosis, and now when we're trying to get down to the how and why behind your belief, you say, well, maybe I might have some existential angst about wanting to hang on to the divine. Do you think that's a good reason to believe anything?
No.
Then why on earth would you hold a belief, and the reason that you give us for that belief, you immediately acknowledge is not a good reason for that belief. And so I'm genuinely confused, because the only way I can make sense of that is that you don't care about the truth. And so you're just going to believe whatever it is you feel a desire to believe, while acknowledging you don't have a good reason. I can't do that. I can't even wrap my head around it. Like, I don't want to, like, I'm fine with believing things and finding out I had a bad reason, but as soon as I have a bad reason, I can't keep believing them. And I'm confused as to how or why you could. So if maybe you could help us there.
Sure. Well, I watch you guys a lot. I subscribe. I really feel community with you. And through watching these over the years, I've started kind of questioning my own. And like I said, I'm very uneducated in science. So when I talked to Lloyd, he recommended I get some books. So I got one on human evolution, Charles River editors. It's a quick read. It's only 55 pages. I know that won't be enough, but I'm going to research the resources on here, the references, when I get through this book. But one thing that I'm jumping around a lot, because I'm just
because I really don't think that had anything to do with the question. But I mean, if we can try and get on track, because the whole thing here, the key to all the stuff that JMike and I do, whether it's Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, etc., is tell us what you believe and why. You've told us that you're a polytheist, pagan, heathen, pantheist, deist, and the why is possibly because of you just really want there to be a divine. Now the next question is, if you acknowledge that that's a bad reason for believing something, do you have any good reason for believing? And if you don't, how can you keep believing something knowing you don't have a good reason?
There's one question with creation and the human reproductive system that keeps me hanging on, that there's a design to it.
That there's a design, he said?
Yes. There's some intelligence to it.
How would you, okay, we have one universe to look at right now. How do you differentiate between a universe that's designed and a universe that isn't?
I don't know.
Yeah, so for me, it sounds like you're going back to the I really want to believe it thing. Like I would really want to, like, I love philosophy, and I would really want for libertarian free will to be true, right? Like, that would be cool, it'd be great. I don't think the science points to that. And even if I was to say, like, if I have all the good reasons to abandon that belief, like, why? Of course I'd want that, but I don't know why I would hold on to that in virtue of new information that tells me otherwise. I feel like that would just be, at that point, you're just deceiving yourself.
That's one thing that fascinates me also, and makes me, wonder, like, is someone who is a theist, like not as strong, I can't think of the word I want to use, not so self-assured as someone who's an atheist, like where someone is a theist just might want to keep this belief because they feel that they just need something higher than themselves, where they are too scared.
Feeling like you need something higher or scared is not remotely getting to the aspect of whether or not the claim is true. I mean, you have a specific proposition that you believe is true, right? You take that proposition, you say, that is true, I believe it. You might not claim that you have knowledge in the proposition.
For the record, and I apologize, I'm not convinced he has a specific proposition. I think he has a really vague proposition.
Sure. But there's something there that you think is the case. But it sounds like the only method you're using is that I just really, really want that to be the case. I really want a lot of things to be the case. I want $1 million in my bank account right now. I want to solve financial issues and things like that. But my emotions aren't going to have any direct causal relation to that. That's just entirely independent. If I believe in whatever proposition it is, I have independent attestation or evidence for that claim outside of my emotions or how I feel about it. But if I'm only relying about how I feel about it, I mean, does that sound like that is a good mechanism to get to truth? Or does that sound like you could potentially find multiple wrong answers in virtue of you appealing to your emotions?
Yes, I agree. I would have to agree with that. And that's why I was explaining, I've always done my own path to the truth through theology and history. And now I'm really, after watching you guys for so long, I'm really going to dig into some science. And
well, Mike, you keep going back into the science. This has nothing to do with the science or anything. You're almost admitting you don't know. Why don't you just say you don't know?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Let me try this. Let me try a slightly different tact. If you found out that somebody believed in Jesus and their reason was fear and ignorance, what would you tell them?
That's not a very good reason to hold on to that belief.
Okay. Would that also be true if you found somebody who believed in Allah for fear and ignorance?
Yes.
What about Thor?
Yes, put that way, yes.
What about an afterlife?
That's vague. There's not a whole lot known. The path that I follow would be the Germanic.
It's not vague. I don't know why you jumped away, Mike. I don't know why you jumped away. But the question is, what would you say to someone who believed in an afterlife out of fear and ignorance?
That's not a good reason to believe that.
Same thing for lucky socks, right? Right. Which means it's also true for polytheism, paganism, heathenism, pantheism, deism, everything you've listed. So we're back to where we started, where you acknowledge that you don't have a good reason. The only thing I'm trying to get is that I genuinely, don't get me wrong, I understand that people believe in things for bad reasons. We see it all the time on all of these shows. What I'm not used to is someone saying, I believe in this and I know I have a bad reason, and that's not enough for me to stop believing. Why do you think it's not enough for you to stop believing? What is it providing you that you need?
It helps me feeling that there is that I can't prove, but feeling that there is something higher than me that can help me. That is a big reason to cling on to this faith.
Okay.
Faith.
But if you're wrong and you think there's something higher, I don't know what higher than you means, but I get it. That's what people use. If you think there's something wrong or something higher than you that can help you, and it turns out you're wrong, wouldn't it have been better to not believe that there was something higher than you that could help you so that you could find something that actually would help you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So why not just say, I'm not a polytheist because I'm not convinced that that's correct. I'm not a pagan. I'm not a heathen because I'm not convinced that that's correct. But what I am is someone who's genuinely searching and seeking to find what is true. And if there's nobody up there, if there's nothing, no agency above you that's higher than you that's going to help you, then every minute you've spent believing it or relying on it is a complete waste, and it's prevented you from finding the things that could help you. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same as the people who, the Jehovah's Witnesses who won't go get a blood transfusion because their God says so, or the people who won't go see a doctor because they think prayer is going to heal them. You are doing the same thing. The other day, recently, someone asked me if I thought paganism was harmful. And I said, yes, because all magical thinking is potentially harmful. It impacts how you make decisions. It impacts what sort of things you're going to believe in. It's not, beliefs don't just live in a vacuum. It's not like you can just say, well, I kind of think the universe is maybe God, and maybe there's something there that might help me, and then pretend like that belief doesn't impact anything. It absolutely impacts other decisions you make. Otherwise, why have it? It's like, I like Marvel movies. I don't think they're the best. I don't rely on them for things, but I like them. But if they weren't doing me any good at all, why would I want to watch them? Why would I want to spend time with it? If it just gives you pleasure, that's fine. And acknowledging that you believe something because it gives you pleasure to do so, it's not a good reason, or not necessarily a good enough reason, depending on the belief. But Martin Gardner, who is viewed as the father of modern scientific skepticism, was a theist. The difference between Martin Gardner and most theists, and the difference between Martin Gardner and most skeptics, is that he would willingly acknowledge that he did not have good skeptical grounds for his theism, that he believed it because it was something he liked and he did not see the harm in it. And I'm convinced that if we could have sat down with Martin and showed him what harm there is, not only in the idea and in expressing the idea, that he would have been honest enough to give it up. I hope that you find a way to do that too, as you have with past beliefs, because it sounds like you're willing to acknowledge you don't have a good reason. You kind of just want to believe it. It's optimism and hope. But I hope that you someday see that hanging on to things because you think they're going to benefit you is only ever the rational course of action if those things are sincerely likely to benefit you.
I never, just like with what Katie told me last week about about evolution, I never looked at it that way before, Matt. And I'm at a point now where I'm searching again, and that's why I wanted to call and talk to you. You definitely gave me some stuff to think about, just like you did the first time.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'd think about the cascading effect that you have when you allow magical reasoning into one aspect of your life. Like, where does that stop, right? And you can just use that exact thing for other explanations in the world. And so you just have this cascading effect of just applying the same thing that was wrong from the beginning. People do this when they presuppose certain things, certain ontology before they start their work. Right? You would already have messed up at the beginning. It's not going to be fruitful to keep making that error in your life, or to allow that reason when there's just no demonstrated way to substantiate that even being a reason.
I can see that point.
Well, Mike, we appreciate the call. We're gonna move on to other callers, but yeah, please call back and yeah, call us back and let us know.
Thank you all so much.
You're welcome, Mike. Thank you for calling.
I love you guys. You all take care. Have a good time.
Love you too. See you.
We hope to hear back to find out, did you change your mind? Did you find something that was useful? Did you discover that you actually have good evidence for those beliefs and not just, bad arguments and desire? All of that's good. Like, granted, JMike and I don't know each other particularly well, but I've watched enough that I am convinced that if someone actually had a legitimately sound evidence-based argument for God, all of a sudden neither of us would be atheists.
Yeah, that's how it works. I would say my aspects of skepticism would remain the same, but at least this label has changed. Now I'm at least a theist, but I still am going to apply the same standards of evidence that I've always had, and none of that will change. I mean, and if anything, if we find some other thing we can say, well, this thing actually exists, then maybe I can adjust my standards of evidence accordingly and come closer to knowledge in that way. So just a reminder to everybody that Talk Heathen is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism and the separation of religion and government. There's a bunch of ways to support us. If you don't already know, the easiest way is to hit the subscribe button. Right next to that, we also have the member button, and you can get rid of the pesky slow mode. I know that would be worth it for me. And then if you also want to directly support us as well, we have a Patreon where you can become a patron at patreon.com/talkheathen to me. We also have our audio. If this is, well, I'd say usually I like to use the thing, Matt, where I say, if this is too much hair on your screen, I think we balance each other out in this aspect. So maybe we're good. But if you want to take it on the go, we have all the podcast in audio format at tinycc/AEN podcasts. And then two of my favorite things that I like to talk about in the announcements is what's going on with the fan run groups, which we have our Facebook group, where for me, doing what I did was reaching out to a lot of people in the community, people I didn't know online. I've ran shows and done podcasts with people that I've never met, but through going on Facebook and going through different groups, Discord and things like that. And we have a fan run group at facebook.com/talkheathenfg. I know Tangel's set up some things with debates and things like that. And so there's a lot of things on what the ACA is doing for different groups that you can go check out. And I think they're very fruitful for the people that are looking for that. And as well as the Discord, which is at tinycc/ACA Discord. And that one, I think, is probably, the best thing for people that want to get into these conversations, because you might meet a theist on there. You might meet someone who knows different Discords where you can talk to theists or things like that. And so I would urge those two fan run groups. And then as well as the new version of the Nonprofits will be airing after this show, and you should definitely check that out. So Matt, do you want to get to another caller?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. I got a theist. Kevin in New York wants to know if the hosts have complete knowledge of the Bible and whether they are versed enough to draw conclusions about it. Kevin, you are on with Mike and Matt. How you doing?
Hey, Matt. Hey, JMike. Thanks for taking my call. The reason why I proposed that question to the call screener is because it kind of leads into other questions that I have. That I kind of think I have answers to, like, for example, whether or not you can tell whether someone is trying to expound the revelations of God or not.
Well, I can tell you right now that I definitely do not and never have had complete knowledge of the Bible. I just have more knowledge of it than probably most of the overwhelming majority of people who are sitting in a pew anywhere. However, I don't think complete knowledge of the Bible exists for anybody, and I don't think it's required to have complete knowledge of it to draw conclusions about it. But if you've got insight into something, I know that we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and Kevin, real fast, if I can add, when you make a statement of having full knowledge, like, let's suppose that one Christian claims that and another does. I'm willing to bet that they probably don't agree on parts, so I don't think we would be able to call it knowledge, especially in different interpretations. So I want to know even what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. My mind's going in a whole bunch of different directions, but I guess you can sort of look at it philosophically, especially from Plato, in which I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but...
Do you have complete knowledge of Plato?
I'm sorry?
Do you have complete knowledge of Plato?
No. But it was a quote that resonated with me that says the highest form of knowledge can be formed from empathy, from the ability to step outside oneself, which is just an expression.
And it sounds like a platitude.
Yeah.
Which I'm not all that interested in. So let me ask you this real quick, Kevin. Does anyone other than God have complete knowledge of anything, including the Bible?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So then why would you ask us if we
I
have
know
complete knowledge, if your view is that nobody but God has complete knowledge? And by the way, how would you ever be able to tell if someone had complete knowledge if you yourself don't?
That depends, because I also believe that God expresses himself through the individual in many different facets.
That's not that doesn't remotely touch on what I asked. What I asked is, how could you, as someone who does not possess complete knowledge, ever know if anyone else had complete knowledge?
I wouldn't be able to.
Right, which also means
I
that
wouldn't
you
be able
cannot
to.
know what that also means that you cannot know whether or not God has complete knowledge. You just believe that he does, but you can't know that.
That's true.
Okay, so
I
let's
know
toss
that
out
you guys
let's
have
toss
heard-
out let's toss out everything that was in the call screener, everything about having complete knowledge. What is it that you think you have some insight into that we need to benefit from?
Well, I know that you guys have heard to an exhaustive amount, so that, oh, you don't understand this because you are not understanding it spiritually. But I only have two examples that I want to tell you very quickly. Like, for example, in the Bible it says that people fall into error by understanding the law, but not the spirit of the law. And I know you can say that you don't know what that means exactly.
I don't really
that
care
means
what it means. It's
is
just
that-
Kevin, you're just begging the question. You're just telling me about something that I already don't think is true, and telling me to listen to a part of that. And I kind of agree with the part you said. You guys aren't outside of yourself. I don't agree with the empathy part.
Well, yeah,
I agree with. Hold on. Let me finish. So the issue is that things I believe in, right? I use this example a lot. If I go look at a biology book and I'm like, oh, okay, allele frequencies change over time in a population, well, that proves it. That would be faulty of me. I have to actually take myself outside of that. I need independent attestation. I need independent evidence. I need something to confirm it. I need to show how the novel predictions have actually done what they're supposed to do, right? And we can do that. We have things like the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. We can actually test certain factors and see whether or not evolution is occurring in a population. I don't need to read the biology book or have someone go, well, you need to read it this way and you need to understand it that way. It's very specific in the claim, and we can go test that. What can you do with that with the Bible?
Well, yeah.
I don't want appeals to my emotions or anything. I want actual independent attestation.
It doesn't really appeal to the emotions, because we can quickly imagine someone who falls under that category of all day, every day, who studies the law of the Bible, but doesn't come to a point to where it becomes a part of who they are. They don't live by it. Other example that I wanted to tell you.
No. I need to pause you, Kevin. You don't get to go on to a second example if we haven't understood or acknowledged or said something about the first one. I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying on the first one.
Yeah, it sounded like you didn't even answer my question. I'm asking you for what is independent. You're now going back to me and saying, well, if I read it this way, or if I understand it some way, I'm not understanding how that isn't evading the point.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand what you guys are saying exactly, but
things that I believe in have independent evidence for it. I don't have to appeal to the way I read something. I don't have to appeal to just the book or just the claim itself. I have actual evidence to back up that claim. What you're telling me are just things that are claims. We're not getting anywhere, because this is no different than someone positing if I have to read the Quran a certain way, or if I have to understand someone's philosophical arguments for a necessary being, or you're not providing any independent attestation that's going to suit what I find in my epistemic reasoning, which is to back that up with something. You're just telling
Right.
me to kind of go back to me on that.
When you say, here's what the Bible says, the first thing that pops into my head is, why should anybody care what the Bible has to say? I mean, it's not like it's a science book. It's not like it backs up its claims with evidence. And then when you go on further to suggest that perhaps we don't fully understand what the Bible has to say because we're not reading it with the Spirit of God or the God glasses or the emotive thing. And what JMike is saying is basically, hey, first of all, why should we care about the Bible? And can whatever you're saying, can you back that up with independent attestation, with evidence, with an argument? So if you could just summarize what the first point is, like in one sentence, then we might be able to ask the question that clarifies what the first point is.
Well, the claim is actually simply that the Bible is a revelation from God, in the sense that it transcends what humans would think as morality, for example.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. First of all, saying the Bible's a revelation from God is something you need to prove, not just assert. But if your proof is that you think it transcends what humans would think, you are demonstrably wrong, because it echoes what humans thought throughout history, and it gets morality wrong all the time. Let me track all the time. It frequently gets morality wrong, and it frequently makes statements that are exactly what you would expect from Bronze Age goat herders, without the advantage of, game theory, without the advantage of thousands of years of people thinking about these issues, and not the least of which is the notion that it doesn't treat women as equal to men. It allows for slavery and endorses that. It supports genocide. It doesn't want you to eat shellfish or wear mixed fabrics. It's willing, God's willing to kill people for picking up sticks on a Sabbath. It is a grossly immoral book. And the fact that you think that it transcends what humans think, it just shows how much you've sacrificed your own humanity on the altar of this idea. So prove that it's a revelation from God. But even if you could prove that it was a revelation from God, all that would prove is that God is an immoral thug that we shouldn't be listening to.
I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to attack you in any way, but I mean, I was listening to what you said. I don't claim to have complete knowledge, but a little bit more study than the average Christian, in which that was one of the things that Jesus was sentenced to death for. In which,
Kevin,
one of the most profound things that he's ever said.
Kevin,
yes.
Please stop. Please stop for a second. I'd like you at some point to rewind and listen to what you just said. I countered your claim about it transcending human knowledge about morality. And what you said to me was that you don't mean to attack me, but you don't have complete knowledge, just a little bit more than others. There's no reason for me to consider any of that attack. And then you followed that up with, and that's what Jesus was killed for. You're not even listening to what I say. Shut up, Kevin. Shut up right fucking now and let me finish. You are not listening to what I say, and you are not responding to what either of us say. JMike asked questions that you ignored. I addressed your claim about the Bible being a revelation from God and being more moral, and you deflected to something completely irrelevant. What Jesus was killed for has nothing to do with anything I said. Are you going to answer the questions that you've been asked, or are we going to move on to a caller who will?
Yes, I'll answer the questions.
All right. So the first one was independent attestation or independent evidence for the claim. Don't go back to the Bible.
Something that's independent from the Bible?
Yes.
Because a lot of what I've heard you guys say is entirely.
You're not answering the question. Just answer it directly, please.
Well, there's philosophical points that can be deciphered from all.
Yes, I get it. I get it. We can a priori assess things. I'm asking you for a posteriori, empirical evidence. I'm not asking about what you can think about in the armchair.
Empirical evidence is, I mean, we all live different lifestyles, but the ones that, for say, are given as an example in the Bible is
Stop talking, Kevin. What you just said is empirical evidence is we all live different lifestyles and what it says in the Bible. That's not a coherent sentence. It's not a cogent thought. It does not answer his question. It goes right back to the Bible after you were asked not to. And it demonstrates that you don't have the first clue what empirical evidence is, because you said empirical evidence is we all live different lifestyles. That has nothing to do with anything. I hate to do this, Kevin. You are incredibly confused. And even these most simple, straightforward questions, you reply with sentences that have no content of value.
What do you guys mean by... I know exactly what you guys mean by evidence.
I bet you $1 million you don't.
I feel like if you did, you would have at least given an attempt to it.
That's exaggerated.
But when it comes to evidence, I also believe that the human experience is limited.
Kevin, you also believe the human experience is limited. You owe me $1 million, Kevin, and however long this call's been on, you owe me that much time too.
Yeah, you didn't even provide one thing. Like, go back and listen to the call. You didn't provide a single thing. You went back to the Bible and you went back to how people feel about stuff. If those are your standards of evidence about that, then, I mean, you're going to draw very many conclusions about different metaphysical claims that I don't know how you're going to differentiate between the two without special pleading.
And neither of us are denying that human experience, I will flatly say, is valid, is reasonable to rely on to some extent, but we also know where human experience fails and why individual claims themselves are not evidence. But when you respond by saying you know exactly what we mean and that human experience is limited, you are once again uttering sentences that are not in any way a response to anything we've asked. And this is now a waste of time, Kevin.
I'm sorry. I really do believe that I'm using logic. But
okay, Kevin, you know what else is limited? You know what else is limited? Science. Science is limited in a lot of ways, okay? But it still can provide basic, rudimentary predictions for things in the future. We can substantiate claims within it, or we have models that we can say, well, they're not necessarily substantiated, or this could go with the data that we have. We have similar issues of that, but that doesn't get in the way. Whereas what you're saying just goes to, like, you throw your hands up almost. It's like you don't have anything to give. I don't know how you feel confident about the belief if you can't answer a simple question about I just know that if I believe in some claim like that, or really any claim I believe in, I can give you a reason why I believe it, and it won't go back to my emotions about it. It'll go about something that is independent of me even existing. If I died tomorrow or if I didn't live, does not affect it. And I don't feel like you are understanding the importance of that.
I do. I do, because I mean, I can't sit here and tell you guys that 100% of the Bible is a book of morals. Some of it's a story. But when it comes to things that we can then test and compare to real life things, it happens on an individual basis, in which, yes, we look at the Bible and, yeah, is this right or is this wrong? I mean, we can come to determination.
No. Here's your sentence. I typed it because I typed quickly. Here's your sentence. Part of it, as you stated it. When we test and compare to real life things, it happens on an individual basis. And yes, we look at the Bible. You don't know what empirical evidence is, and you don't know how to address any of these questions. You keep going back to the Bible and you keep uttering sentences that are not connected. If this were a syllogism, you don't have major and minor premises and a connecting point. You can't construct a syllogistic thought. You sit here and you say, you think that you're speaking logically. You're not. You're not even speaking coherently half the time. And that's very concerning, because it's like you start a thought and you move on to another thought. And I'm not trying to beat you up over it. I know plenty of people who do that. either because they're nervous, because they have some mental health condition, because they are stressed, or because maybe they've never had to face challenges on this. Maybe they're just used to people going along agreeing. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You are not speaking cogently about the subject. Like, for example, if I asked you, can you define empirical evidence?
Well, I don't know if you're going to take this as empirical evidence or not, Matt, but the things that
So the answer is no.
from the Bible, things that I can add to myself and inform on how I live my everyday life is the second example that I was trying to give to you, in which, say for the sake of argument, you can compare the life of a rich man compared to someone who lived in poverty. Now, to understand it spiritually, you can actually arrive at the conclusion that the person who lived in poverty lived a much richer life than someone who was financially rich, for example.
Okay, Kevin, we're done.
Yeah, this is
No, Kevin.
Yeah.
You did what you wanted to do, which you did. Shut up, Kevin.
You're muted, Kevin.
You did what you wanted to do, which is to get your second incoherent point out. But I'm done listening to any points from you at all, because your second example was you can compare the life of a rich man to someone in poverty, and to understand spiritually, you can understand the conclusion that the person in poverty lived a better life. No, that is all just you tossing out garbage. Yes, I can compare the life of a rich man to someone living in poverty. And when I compare those, I can find lots of similarities and lots of differences. And there's no guarantee that either of them is going to be morally superior or morally deficient. You are generalizing in a broad way. But when you say to understand spiritually, when you haven't defined what spiritual is or why we should care to understand it spiritually, that's also a failure. There's nothing more that I ever need to hear from you, Kevin, other than, hey, I've thought about this. I now am willing to define what empirical evidence is, and then either present empirical evidence or acknowledge that I didn't have any in the first place and that I was just duped like many other people.
Yeah, and I want to add real fast, Kevin, real fast. I want to add that everything that you had said previous to that, and the experience of life and how one person lives over the other. I've heard, I talk with a lot of spiritualists, like New Age spiritualists. There's nothing you said different that they don't plug in crystal or manifestation into, right? You're on a par with so many metaphysical claims on such like a very low standard. I'm gonna drop the call, Kevin. I want you to go back and listen to it, because there's a lot of things I feel like it should not be as difficult for you to conjure up some empirical evidence if you believe the claim is true.
Or to define it.
Or to define it. I would just call back and listen back to that, because otherwise we're not going to make any progress in the conversation. It's just a waste of time. I literally get the same arguments when I go on to, so sometimes I'll go on this app, it's like Stereo or something. There'll be a lot of spiritualists on there, and I'll join their panels and ask them why they believe what they believe. And it's the same kind of thing. There's nothing of substance there. It's like just very platitude filled, feel good about the way I'm talking. I never get that. Because if I had that, I would believe in so many things in my life.
I think the reason it's extra frustrating for me is that, he started off with this, do we have complete knowledge, which of course is nonsense. Nobody does. It's ridiculous. Do I have more knowledge of the Bible than Kevin? I don't know. Kevin might know the Bible way better than me. We'd have to take a test to find out. I really don't care, because when I was a Christian, when I was a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian going to church, I knew the Bible less well than I do now. And I believed some of the same things that Kevin did, but I could still express them in a different way. I never went to, if you asked me, and we're not going to do this as a fun exercise, but I could put on my Jesus hat and tell you how and why I believed what I believed. It was bad reasons, but at least it was a sort of cogent argument or something that you could make sense of. It was never well, if you want to look at this story here and get it from a spiritual sense, you can go. It was like there's so many fragmented thoughts in what Kevin says. And I genuinely, I'm not mad at Kevin. I'm not irritated. I don't want to beat him up. I don't know what his issues are, because it could be nerves. It could be, who knows? But all I know is that when I went forward, when I was a Christian, it's not my job to prove to you that God exists. That is for God to do through the Holy Spirit. My only job from the Great Commission is to share with you what I know about the gospel and the answers that I've received, so that the Holy Spirit can perhaps work through me to lead you to the one true risen Savior. Now, that sounds much clearer than what Kevin said. It's not backed up by any more evidence than anything Kevin said, but it is at least something you can grasp onto, because I'm not saying you need to understand this spiritually or that there's some argument or evidence behind it. It is absolutely God saves those who he will. That's it. It is salvation by grace through faith. That is my view from, when I was a Southern Baptist. That is so much easier to explain than either the pantheist stuff that Mike was calling in, or Kevin's really confused thing of, he thinks there's some hidden spiritual something to get out of the Bible, but he can't put it into words. And I know that's got to be really frustrating.
Well, you're using something that you don't have a basis for defending, and then having to use something else like a spiritual sense, which is a whole nother metaphysical claim that you haven't substantiated, in order to defend the claim that hasn't already been substantiated. It's just like, I don't see how you don't realize the issue with that. But
it reminds me of a debate I did recently, and not to beat up on Kenny again, but I will. And that is that, it was, is there good reason to believe in God? And Kenny's good reason for believing in God was to point to essence, which he couldn't define or demonstrate was even real. So his entire thing boiled down to, yes, there's a really good reason for believing in God, and it's this other thing that there's no good reason to believe in, and I can't demonstrate or prove. It's bizarre, because when you buy in, this shows, like I was saying earlier, about what is harmful about beliefs. Magical thinking is always harmful. Doesn't mean it's harmful all the time. It just means it can potentially be harmful. And so if you buy into a notion that is wrong, and it doesn't seem that on its own it has a problem, like the notion of essence, that there is something penny about a pen, or something humany about a human that goes beyond its parts. There's something that transcends that. As soon as you buy into that notion, which in and of itself may not be harmful, it opens the door to everything else that you can base on it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that was a fun debate. I watched that. The essence thing is interesting. I feel like it commits you to non-existent things as well, but that's a whole boring conversation.
He reached out to ask me if I'd come visit with him in his class at some point. He hasn't given me a date yet, but I said yes, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. We have another theist caller, Jeff in California, wants to talk about, maybe this segues pretty well, Matt. He wants to talk about how God is more than what's in the Bible. So maybe we can get some extra clarification from Kevin's call here. You are on with Matt and Mike.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Mike. Hey, guys. What I think is, I kind of feel like, the God as represented in the Bible, I feel like that has been largely debunked by, all the things that you guys always talk about. I watch your YouTube channels all the time, and I agree with everything that you say for the most part. But I feel like what I feel like God is it's certainly not the bullshit you read in the Bible, where a guy lived the Moses flood and Adam and Eve and all that garbage. I don't believe any of that. And but I still think that what God is like, the physical properties that exist in nature, why gravity acts the way it does. And all the combination of those forces are why, like, a north magnet attracts to a south magnet, or, all the physical features. I feel like that's kind of what God is. And does that make sense? Or am I just you think I'm just kind of fooling myself? Because,
I call it God.
Human.
I have no problem accepting that gravity works the way it does, and that there's, there's uniformity and order without calling it God. This combination of forces. What's the justification for saying, here are the things we understand about physics, and I'm also going to claim that it's God? What justifies adding that label?
Well, I suppose I guess there really isn't. It doesn't have to be. I mean, on the one hand, I feel like it doesn't have to be labeled, but on the other hand, I kind of feel like the combination of all the properties. I mean, I think it's kind of human nature that you need to have a definition for, that people just.
I'm only stop, Jeff. I'm only concerned. Do you actually believe that there is a God?
I don't believe that there's a God in the sense that, what most of these callers call about with the God of the Bible. I don't believe the God of the Bible, just like I don't believe in Zeus.
Well, Jeff, define it. Jeff, don't define it in negation from what other people believe. Define what it is that you believe.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like what I think, what I think God is the culmination of all of the the properties of physics and biology and all that stuff combined is basically. I mean, I guess you don't really need to have a definite. I mean, I guess there's no reason to believe that there's an entity. I don't believe that there is like an entity of God that is God, but I feel like you almost need.
Does this? Let me help you out. Does this? Jeff, when you talk about this God, do you have a state of intentionality or consciousness to it? Because if you're just describing things in physics or look at stellar nucleosynthesis or something, and that's so crazy and that's so cool, which it is, by the way, I suggest everyone go research. That's very interesting stuff. I don't see why you call it that, why you add this extra assumption or ontology to it or aspects of metaphysics. I don't get that, because it's not needed. The predictions you derive from it don't need that extra assumption. It sounds like you're just saying, I want to believe in X because it's so vastly or it's so much more than my understanding, and so I'm adding something to it. I don't see the justification for that.
No, I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, I guess maybe it's just your innate human being is I feel like you need to have, but I don't think that God is some benign being that's gonna forgive everything and everything like that. I mean, if it happens, if God forgives everything, God forgives everything. That's great. He'll forgive me if I don't believe all the bullshit that I've been.
Well, so I'm not focused on any of that. You're focusing on the things that the properties this thing has. I care about the actual ontological basis of this claim, whether this thing is a thing, or if you're just saying.
It's not like you or anybody else is saying that the composite of the laws of physics could save us or forgive us. I mean, that's nonsense. So you've gone from something where you want to put a God label on something where I'm trying to find out why it's justified, just saying maybe it'd be, maybe if there's a God and it's going to forgive us, that might be nice. Well, I don't know that I need or want forgiveness, but I don't see how the laws of physics could forgive us. So it's like you're jumping from one thing to another, and you got down to this, well, maybe there's an innate need to have this. Yes, but whether or not there's an innate need in humans to apply a bullshit label to something that they don't understand doesn't tell us anything at all about whether or not the thing is true. And all I care about is true. If you're just like, hey, let's, fire up the bong and talk about, could the laws of physics be considered a God? Well, sure, anything could be considered a God. The question is, why are you adding that label to it? It's like if nobody had ever presented the notion of a God agent and you just learned about physics, you wouldn't apply the God label to it. It's not like you'd look at, photosynthesis and say, clearly that process in plants is also a thinking agent governing the universe that, nobody would do that. And what it is not an innate thing in humans. It is you have grown up in a culture where most people believe in a God, and where they look at the people who don't believe in God as if they are inferior, as if they are wrong, as if they are reprobates. And rather than acknowledging you are one of those people who they want to look down upon, you want to find a way to say, well, I don't believe in a God like that, but I can believe in a God in a different way. Why? Why the fuck would anybody believe in a God? Why would we care to, unless there's reason to think that agent actually exists?
That makes a lot of sense. That makes perfect sense. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But now let me ask you something else. I mean, well, I've got you. I mean, like I was raised Catholic, right? And I haven't gone to church for at least 10 years on a regular basis. But I kind of feel like, my parents are like Shia Catholic. They're like crazy Catholic, right? And so do you think it's wrong for me? I mean, whenever I see them, I still go to church. And I feel like that's just the easier way to go. But, I mean, I feel the way that you guys seem to present things, like there's really no need for a God. So, and I think that's probably why I try to push, the laws of nature or whatever and group that into a God. I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And so I'm just kind of, do you think it's wrong for me to even go to church? I mean, I just feel like it's the path of least resistance than trying to go out to my parents and say, hey, you guys are, all the stuff that you guys have been believing in your whole life, I think that's a bunch of bullshit, and I think you guys should realize that it's a bunch of bullshit too.
I'm interested to hear JMike's take on this. Because mine's really easy. I have no problem at all going to church. And if my parents asked me to go to church, I would probably go with them, provided they know that it wasn't some subterfuge or something. And they know that I absolutely think they believe unwarranted, irrational garbage. But I'm not afraid to go to church. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I've been an atheist for a long time. When I was like 15 or 16, I dated a girl for like 2 years and went to church with her every Sunday, even though I didn't believe. Parents knew I was an atheist, and I had no problem with that. I think it's weird if you had hesitance to it, or maybe if you're an anti-theist or something, you just really don't like it. But if it's in the sake of your family, like my mom's Catholic, my dad's Catholic, but if it was the opportunity for me to only see them through church, I would take that opportunity. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but you don't have to. I mean, is there any reason to butt heads? No, I don't see a reason just to do it for the sake of it. I feel like some people, especially a lot of atheists, might have guilt in doing this. It's like you have a new T-shirt on, you want to go show everybody. It's like, well, not everybody really cares, and if it's not reciprocated by the other person, then there's really no point of bringing that up. I mean, but yeah, I would say I don't see any problem with it.
So you don't think that I mean, it just seems like there's not much of a. It just seems like it doesn't really accomplish anything if I come out to them. I feel like it's almost like I'm coming out like I'm telling them I'm gay or something like that.
No, you're not talking about something different, Jeff. I mentioned that I would be willing to go to church because my parents already know what I believe. That's very different from that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't think my parents don't think they think that I go to church regularly. And I mean, I don't tell them I go to church regularly, but I don't see them that often. I just saw my parents the first time in over a year. But I mean, so I don't actively have a conversation with them about how I think that I think that their beliefs are wrong. Yeah, I talk to them about that politically. I tell them their beliefs are wrong all the time.
So Then the question you're asking is, should you remain closeted?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
that's entirely up to you. I don't get to make a decision for anybody else because I don't know the impact of it. And for me, the question is always, if it's unsafe, if it's risky for you, your life, your health, your happiness, etc., then you're under no obligation to do so. Although you may be under moral obligation if in fact there's no risk to you and there would be a benefit, but that's a sideline. My view is this: you come out the moment you are unwilling to continue having someone think you are someone you are not. I had to, now granted, I was forced out, but my plan was to come out because I don't want people to like me or dislike me based on someone I'm not. That happens often enough, even with me being honest. People assume I'm something I'm not frequently, and then either like me or dislike me. But I definitely don't want someone to say to sit there and think, oh, Matt's this blah blah blah, and he's going to church and all this other stuff. I don't want them to think lies about me. I'd rather, if their view of me is that Matt's an atheist and therefore I can't like him, I'd rather know that, and I'd rather be surrounded by people who know me and care about me for me. But that's your call.
No, yeah, you're telling me stuff that I know is right. You're telling me stuff that I know in my mind. I mean, I can fool myself and lie to myself and tell myself whatever I want to tell myself. But that's just kind of how it's difficult for me to say I'm an atheist. But I mean, by pure definition, if I don't believe anything that has been presented to me as being what God is, I guess that makes me an atheist. But it just seems like it's difficult to admit that, I guess. And I don't really know that many people that I would come out to or whatever. I feel like coming out sounds like a different story altogether. But I mean, I just kind of, I don't know.
Well, I'll put my experience when I came out to my parents was like 14 or 15, and I was pretty terrified to mention it, because even hearing the word atheist while I was trying to read things and figure out what I believed in, unfortunately my brain was cursed with caring about these things at a very early age, so I was very serious about it at an early age. But even the word atheist would make my stomach drop when I would hear people say it, because of certain norms and certain things that just I grew up with, not from my family or anything, but school and things like that. But I can tell you from my experience, and similar to what Matt's saying, having my parents know who I am and not hiding that, which is a very big thing, was very liberating for me. And I think we have, in this aspect, I think we obviously will have a great relationship regardless, but in this aspect of it, there's never been a butting of the heads, because we were just honest about it. Now, you're not going to get, my parents aren't your parents, and I'm not expecting you to get the same treatment, but only that, and you're going to have to decide that. But I will tell you how beneficial it is for me. And now I don't have to worry about that, because in fact, when I talk to people about it, they seem intrigued because they question these things and they don't feel like they can talk to people. They feel like they're trapped. They feel like they don't have people they can reach out to. Mm-hmm. So just hearing one atheist, something like that, might break the ice for them to go, shit, maybe this isn't weird, and maybe I shouldn't feel this way about it. I know that worked for me, at least. So,
although next time you call into the show, you'll have to let the call screener know that you're an atheist, not a theist, because you don't need to lie to us.
Well, I wasn't. I wasn't trying to lie, saying I was. I know. Like I was saying, is I was conceiving the concept of God, and when I said, I guess I'm a theist, but because I think that God, I was thinking that God is basically, it's not what you read in the Bible. It's the basic.
I got it, Jeff. It was just a joke.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, we appreciate the call. We only got a few more time. I'm gonna get some announcements here, but
I understand.
Yeah, no problem. But hey, we appreciate your call.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys talking to me about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Have a good one. All right, I'm gonna get into my favorite time of the show, and that is specifically because of one person. But I want to announce the Patreon supporters, which are patrons, not Patreons. I hear people say that all the time, and it's weird to me. But the patrons, we have Eric Tweet, CJ Dennis, Dingleberry Jackson, which I love, and I just hope that he stays a Patreon for me.
I always want to say, I always want to hear you say it like Leroy Jenkins, kind of.
Yeah, I did. I think I did last week with Johnny, but I don't want to give special privileges. I like Balaam's donkey as well, which is number 4, and then 5 is Paul Leah, and then the honorary mention for today is going to be or again, actually, the Great North American Dingolo. So we thank you for being patrons and supporting us, and anyone else that wants to do so, you can go to patreon.com/talkheathen to me. Very, very much appreciated. And I got a call that I'm actually looking at now that I want to put on. I don't know if it went, did it go away? I think it did. I had saw something that was talking about fallacies that you've committed. I wanted to bring that on.
It's there.
It is?
Yeah.
It's not on my screen if you want to bring them in.
Oh, maybe I need to refresh. No, it's here. I'll bring it in.
Sure.
Omar in California wants to talk about what logical fallacies I've used in the past and have I ever identified them. So welcome, Omar.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Awesome.
How can we help?
Awesome. Thanks for taking my call, guys. Yeah, so, Matt, I've been watching your show over the years and just various arguments that you've made and discussions, and also some fantastic debates that you've had. So my question today was, through your years of discussions and dialogue, have you ever been able to identify any of your logical fallacies in discussions with theists on a whole host of topics, anything from slavery in the Bible to gender issues to the existence of God and how we can't test for it? Through all those discussions over the years, have you ever actually been able to identify a logical fallacy that you have been guilty of and then on record stated it and, came clean and admitted that? That's my question to you.
Yes.
You have. Okay. Would you happen to remember some of those? And can you refresh me? Because I've been watching you for many years. I've never actually heard you admit one. So are you able to recall? I'm pretty sure you can, because that's something you would remember. So go for it.
Yeah. So live in a debate with John Ferrer, I made an argument that I thought was going to solve the is-ought problem. And John pointed out that I was smuggling in an ought by talking about how you couldn't get from an ought to an ought from an is, but you could get to an ought from two ises. And it turns out one of the ises that I was advocating for actually was an ought that smuggled it in. And he pointed that out in the debate, and I acknowledged it immediately and corrected it. And I've talked about it, I don't know, a half a dozen times since. But when it comes to, you seem to be making a presumption that in my many discussions with theists about topics like slavery or gender or something, that I've actually committed logical fallacies. And I don't know that that's true. If someone can identify a fallacious argument that I've done, that I've used, I will acknowledge it and change it, as I have done at least once, if not many times.
Okay. Well, once I called, I don't know if you remember me, but I've called a couple times on the show. And one of the times I called, we were talking about, I asked you what would it require? What would it take for you to believe in the existence of a God, or, the possibility that a God exists? And you said that it's just impossible to even examine. There's no way to test for it. So you wouldn't even, you wouldn't even want to discuss the possibility, because it's literally impossible for it to be possible. I think something to that extent.
Omar, I would need to go back and listen to the call, because none of that sounds like anything that I would have ever said. And it sounds like that you are incorrectly paraphrasing it, because when somebody asks me what's required for me to believe in a God, typically I say, I don't know. But if there is a God, that God should know exactly what it would take to convince me and should be capable of doing it. And the fact that he hasn't done that either means he doesn't exist, or he doesn't want me to know he exists yet. When I talk about whether or not it's, see, you can, let me finish, Omar, just stop. You said that you asked me what would it require for me to believe in the existence of God, and then you added, or the possibility of a God. Now, possibility is something that needs to be demonstrated. If I have a 6-sided die on here, you would need to look at all sides to find out what all the possibilities are. Because if I just roll it and say, is it possible that I rolled a 9 or a 12? Then most people would say no, but they haven't looked at the die, and that die might have a 12 on it. Possibility is something that needs to be demonstrated. I don't know how to demonstrate the possibility of the supernatural. if there was something supernatural, it would need to be demonstrated that this exists or is possible to exist. We can't just assume that it's possible. But I would almost guarantee that I would never say something like that it's impossible or that it's logically impossible like that. I would need to hear the call. So why don't we just talk today with me, you, and JMike about whatever it is, rather than trying to rehash your memory, which is probably flawed, of something I said.
Okay, and I can follow up with that call via email, so not a problem. But
Sure.
You're right. I mean, it's possible. I'm not paraphrasing entirely correctly, so no worries. Okay, so possibility, any type of possibility has to be demonstrated. So, and in order for something to be demonstrated, we need, all of the elements within the physical universe to demonstrate something, right? Time, space, matter, energy, and just kind of an empirical approach of empiricism to demonstrate something. Would you agree to that? Is that correct?
So you started off by saying any type of possibility needs to be demonstrated, and that I immediately rejected, because there's a difference between an epistemic possibility and I'm forgetting the other term. There's a difference between something which is possible in reality, which would need to be demonstrated, and then what we often go with as the default assumption, and I apologize, I'm forgetting the word.
Modal possibility?
It could be, that doesn't hit me right. It's something
Sure.
Blake and I talked about, but where we say that possible, all other things being equal. Like, is it possible for the Mets to win the World Series? That is different, because it is a possibility that is like, yes, we could not say that is impossible. It is one of the many things that are feasible, but that's not the same as a die rolling a 6, where there are only these possible outcomes and one of them must be the case, because it could be the case that the Mets could never win a series, that they will just never have a team that is capable of doing that. And I don't remember the difference between the two, but as long as we're just going to make sure we talk about one and not the other, I'm fine.
Okay. I mean, so you're getting into a lot of specifics there, but I'm just generally speaking that, and I ask in general terms that and I'm just going off of what you said before I asked the question, Matt. You said any possibility has to be demonstrated. And those are your words, not mine, before I asked the question. And I'm not lying. It's recorded, so you can go back and check that afterwards. So
okay, but what I'm explaining, Omar, stop. I didn't accuse you of lying. I'm trying to honestly explain something here, and you seem to be getting a little snarky. By the way, the difference was between epistemic possibility and metaphysical possibility. And so if in the past I said any possibility needs to be demonstrated, I'm clearly speaking about one of those two and not the other. And I wanted to clear that up now before we dig down, because if this entire conversation was based on an incomplete statement that I made that you then drew an inference from, it would make sense to correct it at the beginning and not have a 10-minute conversation, right?
Sure.
So stop worrying about whether I think you're lying. I'm not.
I've had calls with you before. You don't really like my questions because, we'll leave it at that. But if I came off,
let's see how long this call lasts. If you keep obsessing over past calls instead of, I tell you what, have a conversation with JMike.
Yeah, I don't. Sure,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead, JMike. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I want to hear it.
Yeah, no, it's better. I think it's actually better because he usually gets pissed off at me and hangs up and drops.
I don't care. I really don't give a shit.
Keep hashing on that, and we'll see if I can't fucking do it on this show too, Omar. Would you focus on the issue at hand and have a conversation instead of whining about your perceived injustices from the past?
JMike, what are your thoughts on pre-bang, pre-Big Bang, and when the universe likely, I know nothing is definitive here. There's evidence that suggests that, let me finish, sorry. There's evidence that suggests that the universe probably had a beginning. And so
you're already wrong. Science does not make the claim about that. If anyone that tells you that is lying or misinformed. T = 0 is for the most part up for grabs, right? And I don't think that merely sitting in the armchair and postulating possibilities is getting you any further or has any more merit than what we're doing empirically. Now, if you want to talk about philosophical concepts about things beginning to exist and what that means, well, I mean, that might be different because we can get into like mereological nihilism and differences and things like that. But when you're talking about this thing, I don't care that you think that's the case. You're just wrong that that's what science says. I mean, just go look at any.
I'm not wrong. I never said that. I never said this is what definitively happened.
You said there was evidence.
Evidence that. Yes, there is evidence that suggests, and I'm going back to, and I'm not misquoting because I've heard Matt speak about this as well. Matt has never said definitively that. Yes,
mention me one more time, I dare you.
Yeah, just focus on. You're so focused on the meta with this. Just focus on your argument.
Stop whining and talk to JMike.
It's important that we talk.
JMike, no, shut up. Shut up, Omar. JMike is not under any obligation to defend anything I've said in the past or anything you think I've said in the past. You either have a conversation with the host of this show without whining and bitching about how you think I've wronged you in the past, or I will hang up on you. Clear?
Because you can't handle the fallacies that you're guilty of.
You're not helping yourself,
You haven't
Omar.
demonstrated any fallacy. I asked you, is that clear?
As soon as I try and talk about, as soon as I go there, he says, you're already wrong.
Omar, you whiny little shit. Is it clear?
You got one chance. Yes, you got one fucking chance or I'm hanging up on you because I just don't give a shit. You're not, you don't sound like, you do not sound like somebody I would want on the other side as an interlocutor. I'm giving you one more chance.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to say what I need to say. If you guys want to respond, fair enough.
Just fucking say it. Stop with the pretext. Just fucking say it. I'm done. I'm almost done. I'm about to hang up on you.
Okay. So anyway, there's a large number of people in the scientific community that think there's a really good chance that the universe had a beginning. Okay. And I have heard people speak to this, atheists speak to different things that could have been occurring prior to the Big Bang theory or concept of the universe coming into existence at one point in time. And they've talked about, just various vague things like energy and things occurring before that, which makes no sense to me.
I'm sure it doesn't. Let me stop you. I'm sure it doesn't make sense to you because a lot of the stuff, especially preceding the Big Bang, deals with a lot of progression through a series of epochs, which takes a ton of knowledge in particle physics to understand fully. And I'm not claiming that the people that are telling you that know, but I don't know. Like, this is the problem. This is so much hubris for any person to go to T = 0 and claim or use something that has a giant question mark and is up for grabs that we're trying to figure out and dictate what that means, especially when you imply things like before the Big Bang, which might not even mean it. It might not have any coherence to that statement. I don't know how, when you go, I'm going to appeal to the evidence or whatever. What is that evidence? Please provide it. Because you're just saying scientists think this.
No. So you just gave an entire, 3-4 sentences on it's so complicated. It requires so much knowledge to know anything that might have happened. And to even ask the question might just be irrational, right? Sounds to me like you're convoluting things and you don't want to deal with it. But my question to you is...
Stop. I'm gonna mute you. You're muted. What I said is the honest position to take. And it is that we don't know. To act as if you do know is hubris. It's arrogance. Now, I want to know how you lend this to God and what the evidence is for that, because this is not something that you can. I don't know how you're just going to go in the armchair and think that you figured this out. You're unmuted. You are unmuted, Omar.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. My question to you is, how would you demonstrate that? You said it requires an intense amount of knowledge and
particle physics about the epochs. Stop. Get my thing right. I said about a series of epochs, right, that take a lot of knowledge in particle physics. I'm talking about which is just after. We're talking like 10 to the negative 36 seconds after, right? And you want to back up from there to having knowledge about something when I'm pretty sure you probably don't have the required knowledge in the series of epochs that precede it. My point is to say, this takes a lot of knowledge just after the Big Bang, just after t equals 0. I don't know how you've now backed up into this area where you feel so confident to give your and then pin it on me. That's insulting to me.
Strawman fallacy. You're not going to strawman me. So you're trying to make me seem as if I'm supposing that I'm a genius and I'm learned in all these matters. I'm asking you a simple question. What do you use to demonstrate any type of activity that occurred pre-bang? It's very simple. Tell me how you demonstrate for that.
I've told you that we don't know the answer to that. Why are you putting a positive claim on me?
And that's the fallacy. That's the fallacy that Matt.
Tell me the name of the fallacy, Omar. Omar, tell me the name of the. No. Tell me the name. Yeah, tell me the name of the fallacy. I would love to hear.
No.
I don't know is not a fallacy. Tell me. No, you're gonna fucking wait. Tell me the fallacy, or I'll hang up on you.
Want to explore?
Tell me the fucking fallacy, or I'll hang up on you.
Trading for it.
Tell me the fallacy, or I'm going to hang up on you.
But then, for God, you cannot demonstrate, so you cannot even explore. You people.
Last chance. We got to end the show here soon. Last chance. Tell me what the fallacy is, or you're just evading the fact that you just made a claim that you can now not back up.
Moving the goalpost fallacy. You have one standard for God and another for the universe.
No. Stop. This is not a shifting the burden. When I say I don't know what's before that, that is a concession that it could be God, it could be natural. I don't know. That's what the concession is. You are coming into this. If you're making a claim that it's a God, that's your burden of proof. It's not. All right, I'm done with you. You keep talking.
Well, you're
done with you. I cannot have a productive conversation if you keep talking or you don't answer or you just say that I think this and that. I'm coming here saying I don't know, and I'm saying that the scientific consensus seems to be that we don't know. That's up for grabs. This is why this is a giant topic in philosophy, which I also don't think makes very much progress. But yeah, Matt, do you have anything? I know you're bowed out on that, but maybe you have some.
Oh, I was playing chess. I don't feel the need to spend any time giving Omar, my thoughts about anything. So it was much easier for me to just go play chess at chess.com and listen, because I can do more than one thing at once. But I love the fact that he wants to claim that there's a fallacy on our part, and the fallacy is we don't know. And then when he sits around and thinks about it, he wants to do that. This is moving the goalposts, a shifting the burden of proof. No, here's the thing about skepticism is that it's often been said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I did a video on the atheist debates thing that you mentioned earlier about how I think this is both right and wrong, and what it means and what it attempts to convey. It is correct, but it is phrased incorrectly, because the truth is, claims require sufficient evidence for belief, period. And the reason some claims seem extraordinary is because they are not consistent with the wealth of information that we already have about reality. If you say, I have a pet puppy that I got yesterday, and you say, I have a pet fire-breathing dragon that I got yesterday, the only reason we consider one of those claims extraordinary is because there's already mountains of obvious, identifiable, detectable evidence. We know that puppies exist. We know that people keep them as pets. We know that people post pictures of them, all this other stuff. And so it's not that a puppy claim requires more evidence than a dragon claim. It's that the puppy claim, the second you make it, is already covered by mountains of evidence that is not covering the dragon claim. And so similarly, when we talk about before the Big Bang, It may be that it is nonsensical to talk about before the Big Bang, especially for the cosmological models that have time beginning with the Big Bang, or at least our local presentation of time and our local presentation of space-time. We can't say what is beyond that, before that may not make any sense. Outside of that may not make any sense. It gets back to the room with the walls. How do we know the walls don't keep going? How do we know that there was anything beforehand? Maybe something always existed. Maybe there's a multiverse. Maybe there's a God. As you astutely pointed out, neither of us are having different standards for a God than we do for anything else. It's just that when you say, hey, I had a really good cheesesteak yesterday, that's covered by a lot of evidence that isn't covered when you say, hey, I think there's a God who lives outside of space and time and is responsible for as the answer and sufficient and necessary explanation for all the shit we don't know. Those claims are not equal. The reason we call one extraordinary isn't because it is in and of itself extraordinary. It is extraordinary with respect to what we know and understand about the universe already. I'm sorry that Omar doesn't understand that, no matter how many times I've explained it. I'm sorry he doesn't understand and can't paraphrase the calls correctly. I'm sorry that he thinks that I'm just a dick who is dead set on making him look foolish. I think he does a perfectly good job on his own.
Yeah. That distinction between implicit evidence versus not having that implicit basis is very key. Well, Matt, that puts us at the end. That was fast. That went really quick for me. I know you got
super fast.
You got a lot more to do. I thought you had to do another show after AXP, but I think you're actually off the hook for that. So I think you only have this one.
I am doing Atheist Experience in 2 hours, essentially. And in between then, I know we're going to hang out and talk to some people on Discord, and I'm going to try and eat some food. And maybe I'll wait for a nice email from Omar.
That would be great. I want to remind everybody that there's a lot of ways you can support us. Subscribing is the easiest way you could do that. You can also hit the member button that's right below that. Get rid of the pesky slow mode for next time. I've reiterated Patreon, but again, if you don't know the link, it's patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me. You can also check out our audio podcasts at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can get from secular sexuality to AXP, from Talk Heathen, pretty much anywhere and everywhere ACA. And then the last two, which I would suggest everybody check out since it's a fan run community where there's interaction between the people within the group, is facebook.com/TalkHeathenFG, as well as our Discord, which is the ACD Discord at tiny.cc/ACA Discord. I believe you might even be able to type in /ACD Discord, and it works. I think they link the same. If you have trouble with either one of those, just shoot us an email and let us know. And then also right after this show, we have the new version of the nonprofits, which is I always want to say 4 o'clock, but I'm an hour ahead of you. So at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. And I want to, if I can, give a nice shout out to the crew that makes this even possible, because otherwise I'm in my room talking to nobody. Yeah, it's just me and Matt having a conversation. So,
which wouldn't suck, by the way.
It would not. I would not be mad at that. And then I also want to thank the viewers, everybody that tunes in. Of course, if you believe, this community is for you. We want to, or don't believe. I'm sorry. Actually, if you do believe, the community is for you. We are here for you as well. If you're going through troubles and you do believe in stuff that we don't agree with, well, maybe you find out you don't believe in that anymore, and you got a community here for you. Talk about these things. And a shout out to all the essential workers, Uber drivers. I was an Uber driver and during a lot of the COVID stuff. And so that was like, I had to take a break from work and all that. Give them all the love and support, EMS, anyone on the front lines that was doing that, because that was tough to deal with, to put it lightly. Yes. But
huge thank you to the essential workers.
Yeah. And so also,
and please prepare, because we may not be done. I've heard some things about the Delta variant. It's pretty scary. I'm glad that we're doing better on vaccinations. Please stay safe and take care of yourself.
Please do. And if you do believe, or we just, we don't hate you. We just aren't convinced that it's the case. Take care, guys.